Welcome to Never Broke Again. I'm Josh. I got Andrew and our friend and guest Ari, not Ari Meisel, all about doing less. And Ari's here today to share his story on how he will never go broke again. So Ari, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I was looking into your book of doing less, and everyone wants to be successful, but most people don't want to work. And you seem to kind of find the formula on how to do both.
Thanks. So first of all, it's less doing. It's not doing less, which is a common reversal, I guess. And it's really about doing less of the things that are not really effective for you, because there's a difference between productivity and effectiveness. So effectiveness is about doing the right things with your time. And a lot of people waste a lot of time in their daily lives.
Yeah, totally. Money's infinite. However, time is not. So what was the inspiration here? Were you sitting at a coffee shop? Were you waking up in the middle of the night? You're like, shit, I'm wasting time here. How did that start?
Well, I had just perfected my 3-hour morning routine. And no, I don't have one of those. So basically, I was working my butt off in construction and real estate development in upstate New York, and got sick. I got diagnosed with an illness called Crohn's disease, which is a chronic inflammatory condition that affects the digestive tract, considered to be incurable, very painful, very debilitating, and very long story short, I went from working 18 hours a day to working an hour a day. If I was lucky, just based on energy levels and just feeling up to it. And that just wasn't going to cut it. So I was presented with this sort of very real situation of what would you do if you could only work an hour a day, which is a question I often ask clients of mine, people in my programs, because it requires a completely different way of thinking than existed at the time, as far as I'm concerned, and to a great extent now as well. Because if you only have an hour a day to work and you still have to get things done, then someone or something is going to have to get those things done for you. So you have to create systems to optimize, automate, and outsource everything that you do. And that's how Less Doing was born. It started out as a blog and turned into classes, and then books, and then speaking, consulting, coaching, and then I ended up on the Never Broke Again show.
Yeah. Andrew's big in the morning routines, and Andrew has a similar
I couldn't
story.
catch if there was sarcasm in the 3-hour routine, though, or if it was legit.
There's a healthy dose of sarcasm. I'm actually I'm buddies with Hal Elrod, who wrote the Miracle Morning, and I'm in his second book, The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, about basically not having a morning routine. Essentially, I have 4 small children. Morning routine is really about them and waking up with somebody, calling my name usually. So I have something of a night routine, but we're in a culture, unfortunately, I feel where people feel that if they don't have some badass morning routine, then they just can't possibly be successful, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, Andrew's big in the morning routines.
I've got a whole philosophy on morning routine. I'd love to pick Hal Elrod's brain, but I wrote a book on morning routines, and I got to publish it and get it done. For a couple of years, I was like, how do I build out the perfect day? Right? Well, you got to start with the morning, right? It's just because you wake up, and how do you put, I loved your book, by the way, Less Doing, I think it was called. And I read Idea to Execution, even though there was a lot of some overlap. And I know a lot of writers do that. There's some of the similarities between books. But it's okay because I like repetitions. But one thing different, and I read a ton of books. I probably read a couple hundred books over the last few years. One thing that you do, and I'll jump back to morning routine later, is that you go over theories, business theories in your books. And that pretty much blew my mind, where I've never really heard anybody put those together. Because right when you started doing that, so morning routines, it's all right. I mean, I don't know how to put it in words, but morning routine.
I want Ari to talk about your morning routine. I want him to disagree. I feel
morning routine
disagrees with morning routines, right? He has no morning routine, right?
So to be fair, it would be amazing to have a morning routine. I think that would be awesome. But it's just not it's not a reality for me in my life. And again, I just don't like this sort of culture that's been created where it's like, if you don't have one, then, you might as well just go back to bed.
Right. Yeah, I agree on that culture aspect. I think everything works different for other people. Like, I was crazy disciplined for a while, and I was like, man, this is boring. Like, I just want to sleep in. I just want to do these half a dozen items. And then I'm like, all right, I want to get back into my discipline. So I'm a little phasey with morning routines. But when you started putting together theories with business theories, I started thinking, I can put together my perfect day by stringing these theories together, which would put together like an ultimate discipline 24 hours, because I got my morning. Now I got my day. And I'm like, for me, I was like, all right, I'm like militant, like, because it's very militant the way these get put together. So I don't know if you could talk more about that. That'd be great, because that really blew my mind. And I started researching business theories. I know you covered Zeigarnik effect. I don't know if you've heard of the milkshake theory. Have you heard of that one?
No, tell me about that.
No, it was in I think Wheeler's book, The Harvard Professor, where he talks about what does everybody eat for breakfast? What do most people eat for breakfast? He goes, how do we sell more milkshakes, right? And they were trying to figure out when do they buy them, right? When do they buy these things? And that for some reason, do you know when most milkshakes were bought? Just
morning.
What's that?
Morning.
In the morning. See, you went to Wharton, right? But so they were like, why are people buying milkshakes in the morning, right? Do you know why, Ari?
Is it the same people who think
they
that
lack
a muffin
discipline?
is like a cupcake without frosting?
What's that?
Is it the same people who say that a muffin is just a cupcake without frosting, so you can have it for breakfast?
Well, basically, like, why wouldn't they get a bagel or something else? Like, go in, sit down, because A, it was clean. It wasn't in their car. It wouldn't make a mess. And B, it would keep them full until lunchtime. So for some reason, they were like, all right, well, we have a massive spike in milkshake sales in the mornings. And what was the reason? This was the reason. So there's a milkshake. That was a milk. So I came up with Parkinson's theory. I think, I might have to Google that one again. But I think you had Ebbinghaus, and you had Zeigarnik, and you had a bunch of others in there. So, yeah, talk to me. What do you?
Yeah. So, I think one of the. So first of all, the Zeigarnik effect is more psychology than a business theory, and there's a lot of that I think that I bring into the basis for what I end up teaching. To be perfectly honest, I disagree with a lot of the business theories that are out there, just from a practical sense, and specifically with a lot of the productivity advice that has been given over the years. Not the least of which we can talk about if you guys want, is the Brian Tracy Eat the Frog, which I think is some of the worst advice you could possibly give anybody ever, for a number of reasons. But there's a basis for all this stuff. I essentially used myself as an experiment for a number of different processes, theories, methods to create the structure that I did. And knowing the psychology is really important, because especially for entrepreneurs, founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs probably to some extent as well, but it's very hard to sort of separate the life from the work, right? People love to talk about a work-life balance, and to me that's a completely bullshit concept, because people are always chasing this idea of this work-life balance, and people are like, oh, I shut my phone off at 5 p.m. and go to my kid's soccer game. It's like, yeah, but you're just thinking about the emails that you have to deal with later on. That's not really what we're trying to do. And also, balance is very momentary by its very nature, right? We are constantly moving in and out of balance in all sorts of ways. So to me, it's more about a work-life integration. And if you think about it that way, whether you're in the office or you're in the gym or you're in the minivan with the kids. Like, it's the same brain, the same body, and to some extent, or not to some, sorry, to a great extent, the same thought processes. So why are we treating those things differently? Plus, you also have people who could be super efficient at work and then come home to a stressful mess, and that doesn't work either because it bleeds over. So we have to apply those things. And a lot of that comes down to self-awareness and dealing with the overwhelm that so many people feel, especially now.
What do you, and I don't want to say doing less again, less doing. You said something that schedules are like complete crap. However, you said you have time blocks. And I found it interesting because time blocks to me just seems like a schedule with time. How would you dissect the two to tell people, like, what's the difference between like a checklist, like go to the gym, tan, laundry was like a big one during when Jersey Shore, versus like time blocking out, hey, I'm going to take this 10 minutes to like play chess, or 10 minutes to go for a walk. Like you said, when you walked your kids in the store and you did a low frequency activity of the brain with a high frequency activity of talking to clients or prospects.
Yeah, so it's not that schedules per se are crap. That it's just the way that most people view them, I think, is not really based on their own needs versus like the culture of the team that they're part of, or the work that they've been doing for for how many years they've been doing it. Yeah, it's more about understanding that everybody has an individualized, for lack of a better term, a circadian rhythm, right? And there are different, you have morning people and night people, right? That's the most basic one people know about, but it goes so much more specific than that. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is peak time, right? And so peak time is not my concept. It's Stephen Kotler wrote a really, really great book about it. And essentially it's the time of the day. It's like a 90-minute period of the day where you are 2 to 100 times more effective than any other time of the day. And in that context, what they mean by more effective is that you're more able to easily drop into a flow state, right? And flow state for many people is where you'll experience a dilation of time. So minutes feel like hours, hours feel like minutes, that kind of thing. And that's different for everybody. And if you identify what your peak time is, which I've come up with several ways to do that, and you respect that time, it's fascinating the results that we see from that. So like my peak time is right now, it's between 10 and noon. And so I really do my best to schedule the things that are like the highest and best purpose of my brain, as far as I'm concerned, during that time. And for me, that's content creation, right? So this is it. This is perfect. And also, which we can get into later, like this is the one scheduled call I have for the next 2 weeks, like on my calendar. I don't do synchronous stuff. Everything I do is try to asynchronous. So if you identify that, it's incredible, because again, mine's like 10 to noon. I've had clients and people that have had it at 5 a.m, 11 o'clock at night, 3 p.m. There's no sort of rhyme or reason to it, but whatever it is, like for you, it kind of is. And so not only are you identifying for yourself, but once you start to identify it within a team, and if you have an ideal team size, which is usually less than 6 for an individual like work team, then and you try to not have that like morning sales update meeting that intersects with anybody's peak time, you see massive increases in peak productivity from the whole team. It's really fascinating. But then again, once you find that one sort of nexus, then you can sort of spin off of that and find out when the best time is for you to do busy work, brain dead kind of work, eat, work out. All of these things are really different. And last thing I'll just say before I stop the rant is you can't necessarily perfectly match that to your life, because unless you're a hermit, it might be really difficult. But we try to do the best we can.
I found what you said interesting, dilation of time. Have you dug into that?
Well, I mean, I think sorry, that's Alexa. I think that most people have had some experience where they felt like they were doing an activity, and it could be an intellectual activity, it could be sports. It's very common in sort of extreme sports where time feels like it slows down or speeds up, right? So the person who sat down to write a manuscript and 10,000 words just flew out of them over the course of an hour or two, and they felt like minutes passed. Most people, I think, have had that. Another way of experiencing that is anybody who's ever had sort of a traumatic accident or like a car crash, something like that, which I have. you kind of remember like every millisecond of it because your brain slows that down for you. So that's a dilation of time, but it's not that we're looking for that dilation of time necessarily. That's just indicative of being in a flow state.
Got it. Yeah. Does that have anything to do with Einstein's theory of relativity? Is there any correlation there?
I don't believe so, because this is actually
Okay.
this is like synapses firing faster.
Okay, because the way he explained it is his theory of relativity, and it was in the show Genius, where they looked at Albert Einstein's life. He met with the president of the United States. He's like, explain that theory to me. And he's like, it's very simple. You know, when you're put your hand on the stove, how come time slows down? Like on a hot stove, time seems to slow down. However, when you're in bed with a pretty girl, time seems to speed up. And he's like, that's what relativity is, like this time thing. And so I was just, that's what I thought of when I thought of that. It reminded me of that. I was like, you know, that's a nice way of putting it. I don't know if anyone else has heard that.
I haven't heard that example. That is a good one. It's funny, by the way, I live in Princeton, New Jersey, and Einstein's house, or where he used to live, it's like a few blocks over that way.
Oh, man. I grew up in West Windsor.
Nice. Okay. I deal with the fire department there quite a bit. I'm an EMT here in Princeton, so.
And I went to Hun.
Oh, cool. Okay. My kids go to PDS, so.
Rivals. So you wrote about the theories, but you said you don't agree with the theories. Is that?
No. Met with a lot of the sort of business theories out there, not the ones I wrote about. But also, I think that I use them in a somewhat different way, or I apply them.
Yeah, eat the frog. Like, talk about that, because there's a lot of people out there, especially like younger kids, that are seeing this content and listening to it, and a lot of it's like not the correct advice.
Yeah, so the eat the frog idea is basically like you're supposed to do your hardest task first, right? That's the first thing you're supposed to tackle on the day, because then like you do that, you feel accomplished, like everything is easy after that. And again, I just think that is such misguided advice. And you know, just as a very small aside, I'll say that a lot of the problems with a lot of the productivity advice out there is that it doesn't work for a lot of people. And then unlike a lot of other things where people, I think, get more resolved about stuff, which is like there's like confirmation bias that usually takes over. When it comes to productivity stuff, a lot of people, if they can't do it, they just get into this deeper trench that they're not a productive person, and that's just, you know, that's their life, which is unfortunate. So anyway, he says, you know, do the hardest task first. So here's my problem with that. There's a few things. One is talk about peak time again, right? So first thing in the morning really may not be your time to do that, or whatever. When you start work, like that may not be the correct time for your brain and your body and your rhythm, honestly. Like I said, you know, for me, 10 to noon is that time to really do the high level intellectual stuff. If I try to do that before that, it's just not, and I've tested this, not just with myself, but many, many people. It's not going to get done. And if it does get done, it's not going to get done well. And it's certainly not going to set me up for a good day. But the thing that's worse about it is that if you are part of a team, and whether you're a leader of a team or not, in my opinion, the absolute worst thing you can do for the team and, you know, the holistic success of your project, your team, your company, whatever it is to hold up somebody else from doing what they need to do. Because there's a multiplier effect that happens there, right? So anybody...
Andrew.
What's that?
Andrew's always like, I need this done. I'm like, I'm in the middle of something right now. He's like, you can only do one thing at a time. I'm like, I want to get this done and move on. And we always battle back and forth about it. So that's something that we differ on here in the office.
I like how you talk about peak time. I can definitely relate to that. Like my brain will be, you know, I can't make sales calls at a certain hour. You know what I mean? Like they all flop. Like I just know, like if I call it this between these hours, you know, they're just not going to be as quality as later in the day when I have more patience, really is what sales calls. And, you know, I just have to have maximum patience. But what are your thoughts on just like living your whole life in a flow state?
That's a completely unrealistic expectation. You're going to set yourself up for failure with that.
What's that?
Do you have kids?
Yeah.
How many?
3.
Are they grown up or are they young?
They're 3, 6, and 9.
Oh, nice. Cool. So I've got 10, 8, 8, and 5. So you really think that you can live your whole life in a flow state?
I think that with the family aspect, if I were to do that, I wouldn't be spending a whole lot of time with them. Or if I was, there would be a lot of emotions on their end because kids are so emotional. It's crazy. Or at least, one or two of them are. So I feel like it's possible to live my whole life in a flow state, but I feel society doesn't want me to, more my wife.
Right. And all of those things are part of, being an entrepreneur and being a human being, right? That we have to
is the balance.
Well, and integration, because furthermore, right, if your whole life was a flow state, then none of your life would be a flow state, really, right? Because we need that. We need that yin and yang. We need that dichotomy in some cases. So there are lots of times in my day and my week that are not awesome, and it makes you appreciate and focus in the times that you can and are.
So I don't have kids. What advice you got for people who may have kids in the future? Something that you can't learn in a book.
Get yourself into therapy.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is so I have 4 kids with 4 very different personalities, and I probably communicate well with one of them on any given day. It's constantly a challenge. It's constantly an experience for growth, and we have to sort of see it that way, and it's the struggle that makes you grow. We can't grow without friction or tension. We just can't, which is another reason why a flow state all the time I don't think would actually be very good for us. But just learn better ways to communicate, and that honestly that's for business, that's for everything we do in our lives. I feel like communication is the skill that is lacking most in most people for a number of different reasons, and it's something that we can always do better at.
What is I got to look up the Zygarnik one. What is that? 25 minutes was it on or?
That's Pomodoro Technique.
Pomodoro. Okay. I had that written down.
The Pomodoro is basically the idea that we work better in sprints than marathons. So with Pomodoro, you're setting a 25-minute timer. You work hard on one thing for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break, and you repeat that cycle. And there's a little bit more nuance to it, but it is a good method. The trick with Pomodoro is that the 25-5 is not what works for everybody, and you can play around with that ratio. So for some people, it's 15-10. Some for programmers, they found it's like 50-20. But the Zygarnik effect is the sort of impulse, the voice in our heads that pushes us to complete the uncompleted, and also allows us to recall interrupted information a little bit more easily. That's like a very sort of brief treatise on it. But the Zygarnik effect is essentially why traditional to-do lists are very bad for people.
And that's because.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to leave cliffhangers here. I just don't want to talk for 5 minutes and not let you guys ask a question or interrupt me. So if you want me to continue on something, I'm going to. So the Zygarnik effect is basically pushing us to complete the uncompleted, right? So even the worst procrastinator, they still like to get things done. Human beings like closure. It's no matter what, at some level, conscious, subconscious, deep subconscious, we like to finish and clean things up and tie up loose ends. So the way that most people have learned to do, or not even learn, the way they just start doing to-do lists, because most people don't learn how to do it because it's not really taught, is they'll have a list, right? It's a vertical list of things they have to do, and they cross things out, or they star things, or they highlight them, whatever they want to do. And there are lots of things on those lists that you can't do right now, right? Because either it's too big of a project, or you're waiting on somebody else to do something first, or myriad other reasons. And you look at that list and the Zeigarnik effect pops up, and it's like, do that, get that done, but you can't get it done. So it creates what's called cognitive dissonance, right? Where you can't make a right from two wrongs. And it really puts the brakes on productivity. So it's the wrong way to do to-do lists.
So do you have a to-do list? Because I read that they say that, hey, all right, I used to have, well, growing up, it was crazy. I had a to-do list a whole page long, right? And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I just cross it off as a kid. And then I got older, I'm like I start reading. They're like, just do 2 to 6 items a day, you know? So what are your thoughts? Just no to-do lists or smaller or?
No, so that's actually a good step that you suggested there. So essentially what's happening is that people are using to-do lists sideways. So the vertical list is part of the problem. And so what we need to do is literally flip it on its side and use what's known as a Kanban or Kanban, depends how you pronounce it. It's a Japanese word. And if anybody uses Trello or other tools like that, you've seen it where you have lists that represent phases, right? It's based on assembly line manufacturing principles from Toyota in the turn of the century. And at the very basic level, you need to have to do, doing, done, right, in those lists. And that can expand quite a bit depending on your individual situation, but there needs to be the things that are sort of on deck, the things that you're doing now, today, this hour, whatever it may be, and then the things that you've accomplished. And you actually need to have that movement between those phases so that it's dynamic. Most people, except, unless you're like Israeli, you're going to be left to right. And that you show somebody a Trello board who's never seen it before, and it's very obvious that we're trying to get the to do things over to the done column, like that. It's just very natural. And we get that sense of accomplishment by moving it over. We're not crossing things out that are then staying in a list. It's very clear what we're working on right now. It helps people really focus, and teams.
Right. Yeah. You love Trello.
How do we solve that problem then? How would someone solve that problem and get out of that funk, Ari?
Well, so that would be a really good way to start, is to set up. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be Trello. I'm generally pretty tool agnostic. I love Trello, but like you can do this on a whiteboard with Post-it notes. You just really want to be able to have those vertical columns representing phases, and then the ability to move between them, so you can look at your task list, whatever it might be, and start to put them there. A lot of people have ideas in their to-do list, and that's also not a good place to store those. You need to have a different sort of place for that, because ideas need to have that sort of opportunity to marinate and not be smacking in the face all the time when you're trying to actually get things done. And another thing is that people will use their email inbox as a to-do list. That's a big problem. That's like just the tip of the iceberg with the email problem for most people. So there needs to be a tool for it. And again, it could be Trello, it could be a whiteboard, whatever. But separating that out and really having that be like your list. So it needs to have phases. It needs to be dynamic. If it is digital, you want to be able to communicate there. So if you have a team, you don't want to be talking about a project or a to-do in Slack or on email. You want to be doing it in the task manager itself. It just allows us to really separate out those different communications really well.
Yeah, that's cool. You mentioned earlier you're an EMT. Like, what made you decide to do that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my time, my hours right now are spent volunteering as an EMT, which I only do overnight. I do overnight shifts, and woodworking. I'm really got into woodworking over the pandemic, and so I just came out of the shop. Actually, that's why I've got like sawdust on me. I love it. The EMT stuff is basically after I got sick through my recovery. One of the things I wanted to do was just like learn more about the medical aspects that I could. I wasn't going to go to medical school, and so that seemed like a good option. And I've since volunteered. We've moved around a bunch, so I've been with like 5 different squads, all volunteer, but fire department, Central Park in New York, and now Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad. And it's been one of the most gratifying things I've ever done, especially during COVID. It's been amazing.
Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, what was the most rewarding story you can share as being an EMT that sticks out to you?
Well, it's a sort of story that ended up really transforming the company in the way it is now. But during the start of the pandemic, we were at our country house in upstate New York, and we ended up staying there for, I don't know, 8 months, 9 months essentially. And so I joined the local squad there and was one of 3 EMTs for the entire town of, I don't know, 4,000 residents or something. And I had a pager. I was on call 24/7. Call came out. I would take my truck with my kit and everything directly to the scene. Someone hopefully would show up with an ambulance at some point. And there's something very interesting about being like the person that goes into the house that nobody else is going into, and nobody else is interacting with that person. It's fascinating. But being what they refer to as like a country medic as opposed to a city medic, you end up almost becoming like certain people's doctors, because you see a lot of the people over and over. They might be older people who have a specific chronic illness. You might have people who are terminal and dying. And I'm very good at compartmentalizing. I had a call a few months ago where a woman died, and we were doing CPR, and 45 minutes later I was taking my daughter to Taekwondo class and watching that. So it's I'm very good at that sort of shift. In this scenario, there was one patient, this woman that I developed something of a bond with. She was in her 80s, and she ended up dying, which we knew was going to happen. But there was a call that came out, and I was not there because I was doing something, I don't remember. And based on the information that I was receiving, which is very limited, people don't realize that dispatch information from 911 to ambulance providers is notoriously very bad. It's not very good information. It's the best they can do. But anyway, it looked like she had died. And a couple of minutes later, I got a message from my COO about something that felt sort of very trivial. And I was just like, this is not last October, the previous October. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to run that company anymore the way it is. And I essentially shut down operations of my company 2 days later, and went back to doing private coaching. So I got rid of my team. I got rid of my mastermind program, all this stuff, and have done private coaching ever since, because I love working with people. But so that was particularly impactful. And one other really quick is that I got to work an FDNY shift 2 Decembers ago, because they were just overwhelmed with the pandemic, and there was a snowstorm. And that was just one of the craziest nights ever, starting with somebody jumping off of a building and me doing CPR by myself on a scaffolding in the snow. It's been incredible. And it's definitely like a stress inoculator for sure.
So do you still, I know in your books you talk about Zirtual a lot. Is that what you let go of, the business you let go of?
No. So Zirtual was not my company. And I don't even know if they're still around. Maybe their CEO kind of had a bit of a breakdown, but no. So that's Less Doing. And also I had the company, and I did execution. That was Leverage, which is still operating. I left that one. But Less Doing. So Less Doing is still my company. I still have it. I have courses. I do my coaching, but I got rid of my team. I got rid of my mastermind programs, all that stuff.
Okay. I thought you bought Zirtual. Maybe I misread it or something. Or
No. Oh, no. So in Idea Execution, what you're referring to, I think, is so Zirtual basically shut down with no notice on a Monday morning, and that night, my friend and I were discussing, we had dinner and we were discussing it, and he suggested we start our own virtual assistant company, which we did 24 hours later.
Okay. I guess I assumed that you bought it. Gotcha. And is that still and that's Leverage?
That's Leverage. So Leverage is as far as I know, is still operating. My partner and I had a fairly tumultuous split in 2017, maybe, wasn't it? And I got out of that business. So
what caused that? What caused that split?
It was a number of, I'd say, like interpersonal issues. I think the biggest one in terms of like a lesson learned for me and for others is that we started the company. Like I said, we started the company in 24 hours. We grew to $1 million in revenue in the first year. Never put a penny into it. Like we had 183 a team. I hired 183 people in over like 6 months. We were growing really fast and doing really, really well and on a really good trajectory. But I don't think we ever sort of stopped early enough to discuss our individual visions for the company. His was a lot larger than mine. Mine was more boutique, more expensive, more boutique, more focused on serving some very fun needs, honestly, for our clients. His was, he used to say he wanted to be the Uber for tasks, basically, or the Amazon for tasks. And that gap is very hard to sort of overcome as you're growing really fast, and there's very relevant decisions that need to be made one way or another. So we had a sort of big philosophical disagreement about that, and then additionally, I was more sort of people, client facing, front of house. He was more back of house, and those lanes got merged too often and created problems. Basically, it's
So you mentioned Hal Elrod. Is he a mentor, or do you have mentors, or do you not believe in those?
Hal's not a mentor. No, Hal's a peer.
Okay.
I definitely believe in mentors and mentorship for sure, and I think I have been that many times. I have had some really important mentors in my life. I wouldn't say that I have one now, but the ones that I have had have been really instrumental, from teachers and professors to most notably, I'd say probably Joe Polish from Genius Network. A lot of people know. He was really fundamental in my growth and development. And then I guess Dan Sullivan also to an extent from Strategic Coach. Dan's been amazing. So I think it's hugely important.
If someone wants you to be their mentor, Ari, where's the best place to find you?
Voxwithari.com. People can go to that and they can start hitting me up on Voxer, me directly, not an automation, not an assistant. And I do that. I do that for quite a few people in business, with Crohn's disease stuff, with EMS, all sorts of things.
What would you say? Voxer? Is that?
Yeah. So Voxer is like the game changer. With a V. So Voxer is essentially a voice communication app. It's similar in some ways to like WhatsApp, Signal, things like that, but it has some extremely unique features that nobody else has. And currently I do private coaching, one-on-one coaching with a couple dozen clients in, 10, 11 time zones. And it's all exclusively over Voxer. So I don't do any Zoom calls. There's no meetings. There's no meetups or anything like that. They get Voxer access to me. And that means that I probably spend on the outside maybe 20 minutes a day on, work. And it's been amazing. So if somebody can Vox me at, 11 o'clock at night, their time, and I can respond at 1 o'clock the next day, my time, if it suits me. It's been the most effective form of coaching and communication I've ever done.
How, I don't understand. I've heard of it before. I've heard of this Voxer thing once or twice before. So what is it, like a text message over voice, like a voice?
It's primarily voice. So think of it like a walkie-talkie to some extent. And it actually was designed and built by some former Special Forces guys. And the most unique feature of it, which I'm pretty sure, I know they have several patents, so I really don't think any other tool has this. So the problem with doing it with like WhatsApp or iMessage or something like that is, you talk for 3 minutes holding the button, whatever, and then that file has to upload. The person on the other end then has to download it. They have to listen, vice versa. With Voxer, within 0.2 seconds of you starting to talk, the person on the other end can begin to listen. So it allows for synchronous conversation as well. But if they're not there, then they can listen to it later, and then they can respond in kind. You can also speed it up 2, 3, 4 times. So I might have what's so cool about it as far as coaching, right, is I might have a client leave me a 12-minute message, which I'll listen to at 3 times speed while I'm walking my dog. So 4 minutes, and then I'll think about the answer, and maybe an hour later, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, 3 days, whatever. I don't set an expectation of time. I'll respond to them with like the 1 minute answer that they need, rather than them waiting, till our Wednesday noon appointment for our 45-minute session where they really only needed 3 minutes of my time. So we move things forward a lot faster this way.
How's that different than like text audible, text talk, right? Text to talk.
Well, for me personally, as a coach, I just think that I get so much more information from hearing people's voice, their intonation, the emotion that might come along with it. That tells me.
No, I mean, like, can't you text? Like, people send me audible messages, right? They send me
in like iMessage.
Yeah.
Right.
The same thing.
No, because again, so it's not, you can't do synchronous, right? So they have to record it. It has to send to you. You have to then download it. You have to listen to it. That causes sort of an inherent delay, especially if somebody's sending a 12-minute message. Plus, you have to hold the button, which iMessage is notorious for people like slipping off the button midstream. You can't really do anything with those messages, whereas with Voxer, you can export them and transcribe them if you need to. And also, Voxer is really cool in terms of if you don't have signal, because it was designed by these special forces guys specifically. If there's no signal, you can still record and stuff. And then as soon as there's signal, it will send it. Whereas with iMessage, you have to like manually retry to send it. There's a whole bunch of issues.
And this is global too. You could send it to somebody in another country, and it's
that's how the internet works these days.
Yeah. Right. So do you gym, tan, and laundry since you're in Jersey, or is that?
I was waiting for that. No, I do not. My workout consists of doing a lot of work around the house, and as much as I've outsourced and automated in my life, there's still quite a bit of manual labor that I appreciate doing myself. So there's plenty of laundry to be done in our house, and no, I do not. I don't go tan. I don't have the accent, I don't think, yet.
So do you have a morning routine, or do you just not? You're not. No.
No. So I mean, look, I get up at 6 a.m. I go down to our kitchen. I let the dogs out. I make myself a cup of coffee, and check my Voxer and my email and respond to those things, which usually takes a few minutes. Then I start making breakfast for the kids and getting them up and dressed and getting them off to school. And as soon as they're off, like if I can, I go into my workshop and start building something.
Well, that's a routine.
Yeah, I mean, it is to some extent for sure, but it's a routine. It's more like water finding the path of least resistance.
Sure. Yeah. One thing, making breakfast is important. That's on in my book, for the kids. And what?
I disagree with eating breakfast.
Eating breakfast, you're fasting, right? You can fast. I eat Sardinian minestrone. It's extremely healthy. It was in Dan Buettner's book, Blue Zones. One thing that, you have kids is, do you hug them in the morning? Do you show them affection, right? So that's important, even if it's only for a little bit, to show all the people you love in your family, like some sort of affection, or else people can, become estranged to an extent, if you're not showing affection.
I definitely do that.
Yeah. So you may not think you have a routine, but you do. You check a lot. There's boxes in there you're checking, and you're like, I'm too cool for a morning routine. But because you're not militant about it, but because you can get militant about it, be like, boom, 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 boom. I got my morning. I'm pushing my weights because that's what's on the internet.
Sounds like OCD. Sounds like OCD to me.
I push my weights. I'm big. I'm doing 75 hard. That I see that a lot, and then I'll do like 10 push-ups. I'm into mini habits. Have you ever read Mini Habits? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll do one push-up a day. I'll be like, at least I did it. So I'm into that, like just doing the micro habits. Like, all right, at least I'm not like falling off in the no man's land here. So staying on some sort of track.
I agree with that, and you've got me questioning now. Maybe I do actually have a morning routine.
You do? Maybe I'll send you my book, and you can, but or at least my list, because I built this list over 2 years. I was like, all right, I read all the blogs, even like page 20 of Google, all the interviews, and I was like, man, I got everything. Now I'm putting bullshit on these lists. I'm like, I'm putting like people are selling me products. And I'm putting their products on my list. And I'm like, nah, that doesn't belong on the list. That product made me feel like crap. I'm like, that's not a real morning item. So I had to I was like, I think I got everything. And then everything is just expanded on from those particular items. So maybe we can cover that another time. But
yeah, you'll have to hire Ari for him to cover that with you.
What's that, Josh?
You can hire Ari, then he can go over it with you.
Yeah, what is it? What is the how much blood do I have to get in the EMT to hire you? What is that? What is pricing like? Is there a range, or is it customized? How does that look for private coaching?
For the private coaching? No, so it's $10,000 for 6 months of unlimited Boxer access.
Oh, nice.
And then it descends from there. So the next 6 months is if they choose, is 5,000, and any 6 months after that is 2,500. So it's actually, I think it's pretty affordable, but it's been great.
Well, that sounds like how Ari's never going to go broke again.
Yeah. So that was my next question. What skills? Obviously, the name of the podcast is Never Broke Again. So what skills would you say that you have that will never, even if your bank account went to zero, let's say you got sued and you got to file because these things happen, you can file bankruptcy, okay, I'm back to zero, and it makes you think I think you said you were in a car accident. You're like, all right, yeah, life, can be, taken away. So what can you do from scratch? Basically, what would you say you've got that would make you never go broke again? Or would you just not care?
Oh, I'd care. So first of all, I see life getting taken away, unfortunately, on a pretty regular basis. So that's definitely relevant. I guess I could start selling cutting boards on eBay or on Etsy. That's a pretty big one for people. No, there are very interesting opportunities as an EMT, especially now. It's fascinating because EMS is notoriously poorly paid work. It just is for a number of different reasons.
What do they make, like $60,000 a year?
Oh, if you're lucky. Starting EMT in New York City makes 26.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's crazy. But there are lots of opportunities for travel. They're just like there's travel nurses. So there's a bunch of different job boards and emails lists that I'm on and stuff that I see. And domestically, you can actually make good money if you're a set EMT, like you go to a movie set or a photo set or something like that. Those pay really well, and you don't usually have to do anything. You can also get paid really well if you're an EMS provider for a Tough Mudder or Spartan race. But there are legitimate opportunities where you could go to Nicaragua for a month and get paid $20,000, for that, which is really good, obviously, for EMS. And it's not like a war zone or anything. It's just they're in need of that stuff. So I have a couple ideas sort of bouncing around in my head that I just don't need to start right now, but I could.
So your EMT skills, you're backing into those. I
guess I could build houses for people if I really wanted to.
What's that?
I have a pretty extensive background in construction, so if I couldn't be a productivity consultant, then those two things those would be the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ari, thanks for coming on, man.
You got a bunch of books.
I was just saying thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. How many books have you written? I know there's a bunch, like a half a dozen.
I think it's a dozen actually now.
Dozen? What's your favorite out of all of them?
The two most recent ones. So the last one is called On Productivity, which was really meant to be my last book on productivity, and it's sort of a summation of all the things that I've learned over the last 10 years, 11 years now, coaching and teaching and consulting. And then The Replaceable Founder, those two. But if there's going to be one, I think it's the last one on productivity.
And what are you reading right now?
So I am a really bad reader. I do a lot of podcast listening. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I just absorb information better that way. I could sit and read a book, and it would take me 5 times longer than it would should.
Well, they got Audible. They got Audible for books now. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. But I like. Well, and the thing is, also most business books are just full of shit anyway. So those don't really. That's not really helpful. I think the average. They said that the average. There's some really funny stat. The average business book has roughly 12 pages of actual content, and the rest is like all fluff. So most of the podcasts I listen to are about EMS and news and stuff. So
no business podcasts or anything.
There have been some that come and go, but none that have kept my attention, to be perfectly honest. It's a lot of the same stuff over and over, really.
Yeah.
Like same thing with podcasts like this. I think you guys have some really good questions. This to me was a really good conversation, but I get so tired of like just saying the same things over and over because, people don't want to have actual interesting thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, I've read a ton of books, and I agree, but I read the books and I'm thinking, all right, I'm just looking to get one new thing right out of a book, which is really what I'm reading them for, because I've read hundreds now, and that's really like, all right, see if I can grab one thing or one vitamin or one theory or one item.
Yeah, but then just have the author on your podcast and say, like, what's the one thing that you want people to take away from it?
Well, I don't know if there's enough time because I have so many questions, right? It's like, but and I still have to read the rest of the books. I've only read 2 of them, but yeah. So what do you do for fun? You do woodcraft. You do sports at all? Your kids are at PDS, so
he works at a wood shop. Andrew, were you not listening, dude?
No
he workshops.
No,
he does EMT. He told me.
I'm listening, dude. No, like, look, he yelled so bad he broke his mic.
The computer and picked him off.
Okay, calm down. Did you take your Zoloft today? Or your ashwagandha? So do you into sports or recreation, like fishing or what? It's just it's nothing like that, Ari.
I mean, the woodworking right now is a hobby. I mean, I love that so much, and the EMS, as Joshua so eloquently put it out. But my kids are really top performers in Taekwondo right now, and so. Okay. And I have a background in boxing and martial arts also. So like that's something for sure that is really fun. I also, when it's warmer out, I play soccer with my brother-in-law and some other guys. And so like, I'm kind of like up for anything generally.
The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin.
There you go.
That was a good book.
Emergency by Neil Strauss. That was a game-changing book for me.
I have not read that one. I thought I read them all. I'll have to. So you recommend that one?
That's my favorite book of all time. It changed my life.
Is he the one? Is that Neil Strauss, the guy who wrote The Game?
Yeah, same one. It's amazing.
So
writer.
That's
He's a method writer.
Is he? So I started The Game.
I had him on my podcast once, and I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, Josh, is there anything else you want to cover? Or?
No, man. I just want to say thank you for taking the time, because you take time seriously. So for you to come on here for about an hour and spend it with us,
my pleasure.
Is a big honor, and I'm glad that we asked you some questions that are a little bit unconventional.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ari. You're an interesting, cool dude, and you give a different perspective on things, and and you're very mellow and you slow down. And I like people like that, because I'm like, I want to live in that flow state. Dude, let's throw this microphone against the wall and see what happens. You know, I'm like, I want to do creative. So when I run into people like calm down and slow, I'm like, why am I not more like that? Why am I not calmer? But because my brain wants me to just do crazy shit all the time. Maybe it's just I'm an animal, but I got to buy a coaching. So yeah, thanks, Ari. Anything else you want to put out there for our listeners?
I really do invite people. They can go to voxwithari.com and they're welcome to get in touch if they have questions or anything about that. So that's it. And they can go to lessdoing.com too to see the other stuff.
Not doing less. Lessdoing.com.
Less doing. So have other, have other people. I always think like, I get that. I'm like, have the girl do my homework. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a less sophisticated perspective on it, but but it makes sense. I get it. So, all right, shoot. Thanks a lot, Ari. And we're going to put this out there, and we'll catch you later.